The ships came without warning on a cold morning in December. 500 vessels, each one larger than any city on Earth, appeared near Jupiter like ghosts stepping out of darkness. Every satellite, every telescope, every sensor humanity had pointed toward, the sky confirmed the same terrible truth. They were not alone in the universe, and whatever had found them was not friendly. Commander Kong Tae stood in the United Defense Headquarters in Seoul, watching the live feed from deep space probes. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands that had never shaken in 40 years of military service. But as he watched those massive ships drift closer to Earth, he felt something cold settle in his chest. "How long until they reach us?" he asked. 6 hours at their current speed, replied Director Choi Hannah, who stood beside him. She was younger than Kong Tae, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her job was to know things before anyone else did, and right now, she knew nothing about these visitors. That frightened her more than the ships themselves. The aliens made contact 3 hours later. Every screen on Earth, from the largest display in Times Square to the smallest phone in a farmer's pocket, showed the same image. A creature that looked like a tall, grey insect with 4 arms and eyes like black pearls stared at humanity for the first time. "I am Emissary Corps of the Dominion of 10,000 Suns," the creature said. Its voice was translated instantly, cold and mechanical. "We have watched your species for some time. You have been evaluated and catalogued as species 12,847. Your designation is now official. You are classified as a labor-viable organism." Kong Tae felt the room around him go silent. Labor-viable. He understood those words. He understood them very well. "Your planet and your colonies now belong to the Dominion Emissary Corps," continued. "Your people will serve the Empire in whatever capacity we require. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is simply what will happen. You have no voice in this matter. You are property now." The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one on Earth spoke. Then the chaos began. Director Choi Hannah was not on Earth when the message came. She was aboard a small diplomatic vessel near the alien fleet, sent to attempt communication before the broadcast. What she saw there would haunt her for the rest of her life. The Dominion allowed her ship to dock with one of their vessels. They wanted her to see something. They led her through corridors filled with creatures from dozens of different worlds, all of them working, all of them silent. Their eyes were empty. Their movements were mechanical. They had been slaves for so long that they had forgotten what freedom meant. One creature, something that might have once been beautiful with silver skin and 4 wings, stopped beside Hannah. It looked at her with eyes that held nothing but exhaustion. "Run," it whispered. "If you can, run. They will take everything from you. Your hope, your pride, your will to live. Run while you still remember how." Hannah recorded everything. She transmitted it back to Earth on a hidden channel, directly to Commander Kong Tae. He watched the footage alone in his office, and when it ended, he sat in silence for a very long time. World leaders gathered within hours. Some wanted to surrender immediately. They pointed at the alien fleet, at the impossible technology, at the simple mathematics of the situation. Earth had a few hundred small ships. The Dominion had thousands of massive warships. Fighting was suicide. Commander Kong Tae listened to them argue for 3 hours. Then he stood up. "They have made a mistake," he said quietly. The room fell silent. "They see our small ships and our young civilization, and they think we are weak. They think we will kneel because we are afraid. They do not understand what humans are. He looked around the room at presidents and generals, scientists and diplomats. We are not a species that kneels. We never have been. When we are pushed, we push back harder. When we are cornered, we become dangerous. These aliens have conquered thousands of worlds by making others afraid. But fear is not in our nature. Rage is. Before anyone could respond, the screens in the room flickered. A new transmission from the Dominion fleet appeared. Archondrell, military commander of the fleet, stood before them. Behind him, a holographic display showed a small blue planet. "This is your colony on Proxima Centauri," Archondrell said. 14 million of your kind live there. They lived there. He pressed a button. The planet on the screen vanished in a flash of white light. 14 million humans, men and women and children who had traveled to the stars with hope in their hearts, died in less than a second. "This is what happens to species that hesitate," Archondrell said. "Submit now, or your homeworld follows." The transmission ended. Conte stood frozen. Around him, people screamed and cried. Some fell to their knees. Others stared at the blank screen with faces that had gone completely white, but something changed in Kang Tae's eyes. The cold fear that had been there was gone. In its place was something else entirely, something older and darker and far more dangerous. He walked to the main console and opened a channel to every broadcast system on Earth. His face appeared on every screen in every country. In every language. "People of Earth," he said, his voice steady as stone. "You have seen what they did. 14 million of our brothers and sisters, murdered to make us afraid. They want us to kneel. They want us to beg for mercy." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was iron. "They wanted slaves. They will find something else entirely. Today, humanity declares war. Not for survival. Not for freedom. For vengeance. They have made enemies of the wrong species. And we will make them regret it until the stars themselves burn out." Across the world, people stopped crying. They stopped screaming. They looked at their screens, and in their eyes, the same fire that burned in Kang Tae began to glow. The Dominion had conquered 12,000 species. None of them had ever truly fought back. They were about to learn what happened when one did. 6 months passed after the decree, and to the watching Dominion, humanity appeared broken. Tribute ships left Earth every week, filled with metals and food and materials that the aliens demanded. Human leaders spoke soft words of cooperation. The resistance that Archondrell had feared never came. High Sovereign, Vel sat on his throne at the heart of the Dominion homeworld and smiled with satisfaction. Another species had learned its place. Another world had bent its knee. Humanity was no different from the thousands that came before. He was completely wrong. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, in tunnels that did not exist on any map, Dr. Park Yuna worked without sleep. She was a small woman with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Around her, 3,000 scientists and engineers worked on the most ambitious project in human history. They called it Prometheus, 6 months ago. A Dominion scout vessel had crashed in the Pacific Ocean. The aliens assumed it was destroyed. They were wrong. Human divers recovered it in secret, piece by piece, and brought it to Yuna's laboratory. She had spent every hour since then taking it apart and learning its secrets. "The shield technology is incredible," she told Commander Kang Tae during one of his visits. "It can stop almost anything. Missiles, lasers, nuclear weapons. Nothing gets through. Almost anything. Kong Tae asked. Yuna smiled for the first time in weeks. There is a gap. A tiny flaw in the frequency modulation. If we tune our weapons to a specific wavelength, the shields become useless. Like water passing through a net. She showed him the weapon her team had built. It was ugly and rough, nothing like the elegant alien technology. But when she fired it at a piece of Dominion hull plating protected by a captured shield generator, the beam passed through as if the shield was not there at all. The metal melted in seconds. We call it the Wrath Cannon, Yuna said. And we can build hundreds of them. Far from Earth, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Admiral Lee Jun commanded humanity's secret fleet. He was an old sailor with a face like weathered rock, and he had spent the last 6 months performing a miracle. 300 warships floated in the darkness among the asteroids. Each one had been built in secret, assembled from parts manufactured in hidden factories across the solar system. The Dominion's sensors looked toward Earth and saw nothing threatening. They never thought to look at the asteroid belt. Lee Jun walked through his flagship, the Soul's Revenge, and checked every system personally. His crew was young and untested, but their eyes held the same fire he had seen in Commander Kong Tae's broadcast 6 months ago. Sir, his first officer asked one day, do you think we can really win? Their fleet is enormous. We have 300 ships. They have thousands. Lee Jun looked out at the stars. Numbers are not everything. They have never fought an enemy that wanted to kill them. They have only ever crushed slaves who were already defeated in their hearts. We are different. He turned to face his officer. We are angry. And angry humans have defeated larger enemies before. Ask the empires that fell throughout our history. Ask the tyrants who thought they could not lose. Anger is a weapon, and we have more of it than they can imagine. On Earth, General Baekwu trained soldiers, 10 million of them. He was a giant of a man with scars on his face from battles he never spoke about. He had survived the destruction of Proxima Centauri's sister colony, watching from a rescue ship as his friends and family died in alien fire. Now he poured that pain into his soldiers. You are not training to defend, he told them every morning. You are training to attack. One day soon, we will land on their worlds. We will walk into their cities, and we will make them feel what we felt when they killed our people. The soldiers trained with captured Dominion weapons. They studied alien anatomy, learning where to strike to cause the most damage. They practiced fighting in low gravity, in toxic atmospheres, in conditions that no human had ever faced before. They were becoming something new, something the galaxy had never seen. Director Choi Hannah traveled far from Earth during those 6 months. Disguised as a slave trader from a conquered world, she moved through Dominion space like a ghost. She mapped military bases. She counted ships. She listened to alien conversations and learned their secrets. What she discovered gave humanity hope. They have never faced a species that fought back, she reported to Kong Tae through encrypted channels. Not truly. Every world they conquered surrendered within days. Their military tactics are designed for intimidation, not real war. They do not know how to fight an enemy that refuses to break. She discovered something else too. Among the enslaved species, there was still a spark of hope. Whispers passed between slaves about the strange new species called humans, who had declared war instead of surrender. Some of them began to dream of freedom for the first time in generations. The Dominion noticed none of this. Arkandrel sent regular reports to High Sovereign Vel, describing humanity as fully pacified. He recommended reducing the occupation fleet around Earth to use those ships elsewhere. Vel agreed. Most of the warships withdrew, leaving only a small force to watch the conquered planet. They saw what they expected to see: a broken species, a defeated world, tribute ships and soft words. They did not see the fleet hiding in the asteroids. They did not see the weapons being built underground. They did not see the soldiers training for invasion. They did not see the fire burning in human hearts, growing hotter every day in her laboratory. Dr. Park Yuna installed the final wrath cannon on the last ship of the secret fleet. She looked at Commander Kong Tae with exhaustion and triumph in her eyes. "We are ready," she said. 300 ships, 300 wrath cannons. Enough firepower to break their fleet apart. Kong Tae stood silent for a moment. Outside the laboratory, the world continued its act of submission. Tribute ships launched. Leaders spoke peaceful words. The Dominion watched and saw nothing. "Not yet," he finally said. "When we strike, we do not stop. When we show them what we truly are, there can be no going back. We hit them so hard that they never recover. We make them fear the name of our species for the rest of time." He looked at Yuna, at the weapons she had built, at the hope she had given humanity. One more month. Let them grow even more comfortable. Let them forget that we could ever be dangerous. And then we remind them why they should have been afraid from the very beginning. Yuna nodded. She understood. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and humanity had learned patience along with its rage. The sleeping giant was almost ready to wake. 1 year after the decree, at exactly 4 a.m. Earth Standard Time, humanity stopped pretending. Admiral Lee June sat on the bridge of the Soul's Revenge and watched the countdown reach 0. Around him, 300 warships powered their engines and activated their weapons. Months of hiding, months of waiting, months of burning rage compressed into a single moment. "All ships," he said into the fleet communication channel, "this is Admiral Lee June. Today we stop being victims. Today we become the nightmare they never expected. Operation Black Dawn begins now. Show no mercy." They showed none to us. Across 12 star systems simultaneously, human fleets emerged from hyperspace directly into Dominion staging areas. The aliens had grown comfortable. Their sensors detected the incoming ships, but their commanders did not panic. They had never lost a battle. They did not know how. On the Dominion command station in the Kepler system, Commander Vex watched the human ships appear on his screen with mild annoyance. His shields were strong. His weapons were powerful. These primitive creatures would learn their final lesson today. "Destroy them," he ordered casually. His fleet opened fire. Beams of energy that had melted 1,000 enemy ships streaked toward the human vessels, and then something impossible happened. The human ships fired back with strange, ugly weapons that glowed with golden light. The beams hit Dominion shields and passed through them as if they did not exist. Ship after ship exploded. In the first 60 seconds, Commander Vex lost 40 vessels. "What is happening?" He screamed at his officers. "Why are our shields not working?" No one could answer him. No one had ever seen anything like this. The shields that had protected the Dominion for 1,000 years were suddenly worthless. "Commander." Dex died 3 minutes later when a wrath cannon beamed cut his command station in half. The same scene repeated across all 12 systems. Dominion commanders who had never tasted defeat suddenly drowned in it. Their shields failed. Their ships burned. Their crews died without understanding why. In the first hour of Operation Black Dawn, humanity destroyed 800 Dominion warships. The aliens had never suffered such losses in their entire history. Admiral Lee Jun led the main assault on Kepler Station, the largest military base in this sector of Dominion space. 200 human ships faced 300 enemy vessels and a station bristling with weapons. The battle lasted 6 hours. Lee Jun fought from the front, his flagship taking hit after hit while his Wrath cannons tore the enemy apart. Twice his ship nearly lost power. 3 times fires broke out on his bridge. He never retreated. He never slowed down. When the last Dominion ship in the system finally exploded, Lee Jun stood among the wreckage of his bridge and looked at the captured station floating before him. "Secure it," he ordered. "Take everything useful. Fuel, weapons, food, information. We are just getting started." On 3 Dominion colony worlds, General Beak-Woo landed with his soldiers. The aliens had ground defenses, but they had never used them against a real enemy. They expected slaves who would cower and surrender. Instead, human soldiers poured out of landing craft with weapons blazing and hatred in their eyes. They fought through streets and buildings, taking ground meter by meter, refusing to stop no matter how many fell. A Dominion officer who survived the battle on Kepler 4 later gave testimony about what he witnessed. His voice shook as he spoke. "They did not fight like soldiers," he said. "They fought like something that had been caged for too long, like animals released from a trap. We killed many of them, but they kept coming. They kept coming even when they were wounded. They kept coming even when they should have been dead. I have never seen such fury in any species. I hope I never see it again." Back on the Dominion homeworld, High Sovereign Vel received report after report of disaster. 12 systems attacked, 800 ships destroyed, 3 colonies invaded, Kepler Station captured. He executed Archondrel for his failure, but that did not change the situation. The species he had dismissed as slaves had just delivered the worst defeat in Dominion history. How? He demanded of his remaining commanders. How is this possible? They are primitive. They are weak. They should have been crushed. None of his commanders could answer. They had studied humanity's small fleet and assumed victory would be easy. They had not imagined secret shipyards. They had not imagined new weapons. They had not imagined the cold, patient rage that humans were capable of. Director Choi Hanna sent her latest intelligence report to Commander Kong Tae from deep within Dominion space. She had watched the panic spread through alien worlds like fire through dry grass. "They are afraid," she reported. "For the first time in their history, they are truly afraid. But there is more. The Dominion has enslaved over 200 species across 50,000 worlds. Their empire is vast, and they have enemies everywhere. Those enemies are watching us. They are starting to hope." She included one more piece of information. The location of the Dominion homeworld. The location of High Sovereign Vel himself. Commander Kong Tae received the report in his headquarters on Earth. Around him, screens showed the battle results. 40,000 human soldiers had died in the first day of the war. It was a terrible number, but the enemy had lost millions. Ships, stations, soldiers, colonies, all burning. He opened a channel to every human ship and soldier in the fleet. "Warriors of Earth," he said, "today we drew first blood. Today we showed them that we are not slaves. We are not victims. We are the species they should have feared from the beginning. He paused, letting his words sink in across the light years. But this is not over. This is not a war for territory. This is not a war for resources. This is a war of extinction. Theirs or ours. There is no middle ground. There is no peace. There is only victory or death. His voice hardened into iron. They killed 14 million of us to make us afraid. Today we killed millions of them to make them understand. The universe will remember what happens when you threaten humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not stop until our enemies are dust. Across the galaxy, human soldiers heard his words and felt their rage burn even brighter. The war had only begun. And already the Dominion was learning a lesson they would never forget. Humanity was not a species that kneeled. Humanity was a species that made others kneel instead. 18 months into the war, High Sovereign Vel made a decision born from desperation and wounded pride. He gathered 10,000 warships from every corner of his empire, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, and sent them toward Earth with a single order: burn the human homeworld until nothing remained but ash. Commander Kongte received the intelligence report from Director Choi. Hannah Ann felt his blood run cold. 10,000 ships, his entire fleet scattered across conquered systems, numbered less than 400. Even with the Wrath cannons, the mathematics were impossible. We have to split our forces, he told Admiral Lee Jun through the communication screen. Half continue the offensive. Half return to defend Earth. Lee Jun's weathered face showed no fear, only grim determination. I will return with 200 ships. It will not be enough, but I will hold them as long as I can. As long as you can may need to be forever. Kong Tae replied quietly. The Grand Fleet of the Dominion arrived in the Sol system on a cold morning, blotting out the stars with their numbers. 10,000 vessels spread across the darkness like a wall of death. Against them stood 200 human ships, orbital defense platforms hastily constructed around Earth, and minefields seeded through the space between planets. Admiral Lee Jun stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Spirit of Proxima, named for the colony that had died. His crew was young and terrified. He was old and calm. Today we fight for our home, he announced to his fleet. Today we fight for every man, woman, and child on Earth who is counting on us. The enemy has numbers. We have something better. We have a world to protect. We have rage that has been building for 18 months. We have the memory of 14 million dead demanding justice. He pointed at the approaching wall of enemy ships. They think numbers will save them. Let us teach them otherwise. The Battle of Seoul began at dawn and lasted 72 hours. It was the most brutal, desperate, and magnificent battle in human history. Lee Jun used every advantage he had. He lured enemy ships into minefields that tore them apart. He used the gravity of planets and moons to create ambushes. He ordered his ships to fight in close formations where the enemy's superior numbers meant less. For every human ship that fell, 10 Dominion vessels died. The Wrath cannons fired without stopping, cutting through enemy hulls, turning proud warships into burning wreckage. The space around Earth filled with debris and bodies and the light of endless explosions. On the second day, Lee Jun's flagship was hit by 17 separate attacks. Half his crew died. Both his legs were crushed when the bridge collapsed. His officers begged him to transfer to another ship. He refused. "Strap me to this chair," he ordered through gritted teeth. I will not leave this bridge until the battle is won or I am dead. Keep fighting. They kept fighting. On Earth, Dr. Park Yuna worked without sleep in her laboratory. She had one final weapon, something she had hoped would never be necessary. Project Sunfire, a device that could turn Earth's sun into a weapon for a single, devastating moment. The risk is enormous, she told Commander Kong Tae. If the calculations are wrong, we could destabilize the sun. We could kill our own world. Kang Tae watched the battle raging above Earth on his screens. Half the defense fleet was gone. Lee Jun was dying on his bridge. Thousands more would die in the next hour. Do it, he said. YUNA activated Project Sunfire. Deep within Earth's sun, carefully placed devices triggered a reaction that focused solar energy into a single directed pulse. For one instant, a beam of pure stellar fire erupted from the sun and swept across the Dominion fleet. 2,000 enemy ships vanished instantly, not destroyed, vaporized, turned to atoms by the fury of a star. The remaining Dominion forces broke. They had never experienced anything like this. They had never imagined that any species could turn a sun into a weapon. Terror replaced arrogance, and they fled from the Sol system in chaos. When the battle ended, humanity had lost 80% of its home fleet. 60,000 soldiers were dead. Admiral Lee Jun had to be cut from the wreckage of his bridge, more dead than alive. But the Grand Fleet was broken. 6,000 Dominion ships destroyed. The greatest military force in galactic history had been shattered by a species they had called slaves. The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On 100 enslaved worlds, beings who had long ago abandoned hope began to whisper to each other. The humans had won. The humans had beaten the Grand Fleet. The humans had proven that the Dominion could be defeated. Director Choi Hannah had been preparing for this moment. Through her network of contacts among enslaved species, she sent a single message. Now, rebellions erupted across Dominion space. On world after world, slaves who had been broken for generations suddenly remembered how to fight. They sabotaged factories. They attacked guards. They seized weapons and turned them on their masters. The Dominion had to pull forces away from the war with humanity to suppress these uprisings. Their empire, which had seemed so invincible, was suddenly cracking at every seam. General Biku took advantage of the chaos. With the enemy distracted, he launched invasions of 12 more enslaved worlds. But this time, he did not just conquer. He liberated when his soldiers landed on Verix Prime, a world whose people had been slaves for 300 years. The locals did not run. They did not hide. They stood in the streets and watched the human soldiers with eyes full of tears. "Are you here to free us?" one of them asked in halting translation. Beak Wu, the giant with the scarred face, knelt down to look the small creature in the eyes. "Yes," he said simply. "No one will ever own you again." The creature wept. Around it, thousands of others began to weep too. They had forgotten what hope felt like. The humans reminded them. Freed species began to join humanity's cause. They offered ships, soldiers, resources, information. For the first time since the war began, humanity had allies. Commander Kong Tae stood before representatives of 12 liberated species in a chamber on Earth. They looked at him with respect and something close to worship. "You saved us," one of them said. "You fought for us when no one else would." Kong Tae shook his head. "We fought for ourselves first. For vengeance. For our dead. But now we fight for something more. We fight for a galaxy where no species is a slave. Will you help us finish this? Every representative agreed without hesitation. On the Dominion homeworld, High Sovereign Vel looked at the reports of rebellion and defeat and felt something he had never felt before in his long life. Fear, true, genuine fear. The slaves were rising. His fleet was broken. And somewhere across the stars, the humans were still coming. They would never stop coming. 3 years after an empire declared humanity as slaves, the final battle began. The coalition fleet gathered at the edge of Dominion space, the largest allied force the galaxy had ever seen. 2,000 warships from humanity, joined by vessels from 20 liberated species. Some of the alien ships were old and damaged, held together by hope more than metal. Their crews were former slaves who had never fought in a real battle. But they had come anyway, because the humans had taught them something precious. They had taught them that freedom was worth dying for. Admiral Li Jun stood on the bridge of the Vengeance of Proxima, his new flagship named for the colony whose death had started everything. His legs were mechanical now, rebuilt after the Battle of Seoul nearly killed him. He walked with a limp that would never heal. He did not care. He was alive, and he was about to finish what the Dominion had started. All ships, he announced through the fleet communication channel, today we end this. Today we march on the homeworld of the Empire that tried to enslave us. 3 years ago, they called us property. Today, they will call us conquerors. The fleet jumped into hyperspace and began the long journey to Vel Prime, the march to the Dominion. Homeworld took 3 weeks. Along the way, they fought through defense after defense. Dominion commanders who had once laughed at humanity now fled at the sight of human vessels. World after world surrendered, rather than face the species that had broken the Grand Fleet. Those who did not surrender learned why they should have. On Kerrick Station, a Dominion admiral decided to make a stand. He had 500 ships and a fortress bristling with weapons. He broadcast a message to the human fleet, demanding their surrender. Admiral Li Jun responded with a single word: no. The battle lasted for hours. When it ended, the station was slag and every Dominion ship was destroyed. Li Jun did not lose a single vessel. Word of the defeat reached Vel Prime before the coalition fleet did. High Sovereign Vel, who had ruled the Dominion for 300 years, looked at the reports and knew that his empire was dying. He gathered his final fleet. 5,000 ships, the last military strength of the Dominion, assembled above the homeworld. It was a fraction of what he had commanded 3 years ago, but it was still formidable. If he could defeat the humans here, perhaps he could salvage something from the ruins of his empire. The coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace, above Vel Prime on a morning that would be remembered forever. There they are. Admiral Li Jun said quietly, looking at the enemy formation. 5,000 ships against 2,000. The odds were against them, but he had fought worse odds before. All ships, attack pattern Omega. Target their command vessels first. Show no mercy. They showed none to Proxima Centauri. They showed none to the billions they enslaved. Today we settle all debts. The final battle began. For 3 days, the space above Vel Prime burned with the fury of 2 civilizations fighting for existence. Ships exploded by the hundreds. Debris filled the darkness between stars. The light of weapons fire was visible from the planet's surface. A constant storm of death in the sky. Admiral Li Jun fought from the front, as he always did. His flagship took damage again and again, but he refused to retreat. Twice he transferred his command to other ships when his own was destroyed. 3 times he nearly died when bridges collapsed around him. On the 2nd day, the Dominion fleet began to break. Their commanders had never faced an enemy this determined. They had built their careers on conquering species that surrendered quickly. Against humans who fought until their ships were burning wreckage, they had no answer. On the 3rd day, General Beak Wu landed on Vel Prime with 10,000 soldiers. The Dominion's ground forces fought desperately, but they were facing soldiers who had trained for 3 years for this moment. Soldiers who carried the memory of Proxima Centauri in their hearts. Soldiers who had been called slaves and had answered with war. Beak Wu led the assault on the Imperial Palace himself. Room by room, corridor by corridor, his soldiers fought their way toward the throne room. Bodies of defenders and attackers alike covered the floors, but the advance never stopped. When the doors to the throne room finally fell, Commander Kang Tae walked through them. He had traveled from Earth on a fast ship to be present for this moment. Some victories needed to be witnessed in person. High Sovereign Vel sat on his throne, surrounded by the bodies of his final guards. He was old, ancient by his species standards, and his eyes held a weariness that had nothing to do with age. So, he said as Kang Tae approached, "It ends here. The species I declared as slaves has destroyed everything I built." Kang Tae stopped before the throne and looked at the creature who had ordered the death of 14 million humans, who had enslaved 200 species, who had caused more suffering than any being in galactic history. "What are you?" Vel asked quietly. "No species has ever done this. We have conquered 12,000 worlds. None of them fought back like this. What makes you different?" Kang Tae considered the question for a long moment. "We are what you made us," he finally answered. "You wanted slaves. You created enemies instead. You killed our children to make us afraid. You made us angry instead. And humans do not forget. Humans do not forgive. We carry our grudges across generations and across stars." He stepped closer to the throne. "You are not the first tyrant humanity has faced. You will not be the last. But you will serve as a lesson. The universe will remember what happened when an empire tried to enslave Earth. They will remember that we came for you, that we crossed the galaxy to find you, that we burned everything you built until nothing remained but ashes and warnings." Dr. Park Yuna had given him a weapon before he left Earth, a device capable of sterilizing the entire Dominion homeworld, turning every city to glass, erasing this species the same way they had erased Proxima Centauri. Kang Tae held the device in his hand. One press of a button, and justice would be complete. But he did not press it. "I could kill you all," he said. "I could end your species today. It would be justice for what you did to us, for what you did to hundreds of worlds." He put the device away. "But we are not you. We fight with fury, but we do not murder entire species. Your empire is dissolved. Your fleet is destroyed. Your slaves are free. You will live, diminished and broken, as a reminder to the galaxy. When other empires consider conquest, they will look at you and remember what happened. The Dominion that tried to enslave humanity and lost everything." High Sovereign Vel stared at him with something that might have been disbelief or might have been shame. "You show mercy," he whispered. "After everything, you show mercy." "We show wisdom," Kang Tae corrected. "Mercy is for those who deserve it. You deserve only contempt, but destroying you completely would make us what you were. We choose to be something better." He turned and walked away from the throne, leaving the broken emperor of a broken empire behind him. 1 week later, Director Choi Hana broadcast a message to every species in the galaxy. Her face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds, and her voice carried to beings who had never seen a human before. "The Dominion declared humanity as slaves," she said. "They believed we would break. They believed we would kneel. They believed we were weak because we were young and small." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was steel. "They were wrong. We did not kneel. We did not break. We rose, and we fought, and we destroyed their empire. Today, 200 species are free because humanity refused to accept chains. Today, the galaxy knows what we are capable of." Her eyes seemed to look directly at every being watching. "Let this be a warning to any who would threaten Earth. We are small. We are young, but we do not surrender. We do not forgive, and we never, ever forget. Threaten us, and we will come for you. We will cross any distance. We will fight any battle. We will never stop until justice is done." The message ended. Across the galaxy, beings of 1,000 different species sat in silence, contemplating what they had witnessed. A small species from a tiny world had challenged the greatest empire in history and won. They had turned a sun into a weapon. They had broken fleets that outnumbered them 10 to 1. They had freed billions from slavery and shattered a civilization that had stood for millennia. And they had shown mercy at the end. Terrible, magnificent mercy that proved they were more than just warriors. In the memorial garden at Proxima Centauri, where 14 million humans had died to begin this story, a monument stood. On it were carved words that would endure as long as humans drew breath. They came to claim us as property. They left as a cautionary tale. Humanity had answered the decree of slavery with wrath that erased civilizations. The galaxy would never forget.